All right, ready to equip yourself with the tools of a real economic detective? Today, we're diving straight into some completely fascinating real-world market mysteries. Have you ever wondered why an amazingly good year for farming actually ends up hurting farmers? Or why, when the government slaps a brand new tax on massive oil companies, it's usually you and me who end up footing the bill? Today, we are looking way past the surface of supply and demand to uncover the hidden mechanics that actually drive the market.
Here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll explore the mystery of elasticity. Then we'll get into calculating it, how it ties into total revenue, supply elasticity, the bumper harvest paradox, and finally, we'll uncover who really pays taxes. Okay, kicking things off with part one, the mystery of elasticity. So, picture this. You're a farmer. You've worked insanely hard all year, the weather was absolutely perfect, and boom, your autumn harvest breaks all previous records. But then you sit down to do the math, and you're bankrupt. Seriously, how on earth can producing way more of a good thing actually leave you with less money? Well, to crack this case, we need to pull out our primary investigative tool. And that tool is the price elasticity of demand. By definition, it measures exactly how much the quantity demanded of a certain good shifts when its price changes. Think of it literally like a rubber band stretching out. It measures the pure percentage sensitivity of everyday consumers. Like, if a price nudges up just a bit, do people run for the hills, or do they just kind of shrug and buy it anyway? And there's a massive divide in how we actually shop. Take a European vacation. If airline tickets suddenly jump by 20%, you'd probably just cancel the trip, right? That is a highly elastic response, which is totally typical for a luxury where you have plenty of other options. But then think about your groceries or the electricity in your home. You still gotta eat and you still have to keep the lights on. For basic necessities like those, people's buying habits barely budge when prices change. We call those goods highly inelastic. Moving right along to part two, calculating demand elasticity. Now, calculating this does require a few specific tricks of the trade to get it just right. First off, we always use percentage changes, not absolute dollars or cents. This just makes sure that whether we're measuring in pennies or millions of dollars, the elasticity stays exactly the same. Number two, we drop the minus signs. Look, demand curves slope downward, so price and quantity move in opposite directions. But honestly, dropping that negative sign just keeps everything neat and easy to compare. And finally, here's a crucial one. We use the averaging method for our base price and base quantity. This completely stops any weird ambiguity. Like, if a price drops from 100 to 90, what do we divide the change by, the 100 or the 90? The answer is neither. We use the average, 95, to figure out that exact percentage change. Now, I really want you to pay close attention here because this is a huge trap. Steepness on a graph is not everything. It is incredibly easy to confuse the slope of a demand curve with its actual elasticity, but they are absolutely not the same thing. In fact, if you look at a perfectly straight line demand curve, the slope there is completely constant, right? But the elasticity is actually changing all the way down. It's highly elastic at the top where prices are high and way less elastic at the bottom where prices are low. So when we run the numbers and get a result greater than 1, we say demand is price elastic. This means a 1% price cut brings in a massive wave of buyers, way more than 1%. On the flip side, if the number is less than 1, demand is inelastic, meaning consumers barely react at all. And if it's dead on exactly 1, we call that unit elastic.
Okay, part 3, elasticity and total revenue.
So how does all this impact your actual bottom line? Well, total revenue is just your price multiplied by the quantity you sell. Sure, if you drop your price, you sell more units, but you're making less cash on each one. So who wins that tug of war? If your product is elastic, a price drop brings in an absolute flood of new customers, and your total revenue actually goes up. But if it's inelastic, that price drop doesn't really attract anyone new, so your total revenue falls. This exact dynamic is why airlines are so sneaky with their pricing. They charge business travelers who absolutely have to fly on a specific day really high prices because their demand is inelastic. But then they slash prices to fill empty seats with flexible vacationers whose demand is super elastic. All right, shifting gears a bit to part 4, price elasticity of supply. Because, it's not just us consumers reacting to prices. Businesses have their own rubber bands to stretch too. Just like with demand, the price elasticity of supply measures how enthusiastically producers ramp up their output when the market price goes up. If the price of something suddenly spikes, can the factories just easily flood the market with more? Or are their hands tied, stuck producing the exact same amount? So what actually determines this? Well, mainly two things. First is how easy it is to increase production inputs.
Think about the textile industry. They can easily just buy more fabric and hire a few more workers, so their supply is highly elastic. But gold mining, that's strictly limited by the amount of gold physically in the ground. No matter how high gold prices skyrocket, you can't just magically conjure up more gold overnight. That makes it highly inelastic. The second major factor is time. Like on the actual day a fisherman catches his fish and brings it to the dock, the supply is totally fixed. It's inelastic. But give that fishing industry a few years to build new boats and train new crews, suddenly that supply becomes highly elastic.
Which brings us to part 5, the bumper harvest paradox.
Let's finally solve that mystery from the very beginning. Remember our bankrupt farmer with the perfect weather? Why did that happen? Well, a record-breaking crop massively increases the total supply of food on the market. But remember what we said earlier? Basic food is a necessity. Its demand is highly inelastic. People don't suddenly start eating twice as many loaves of bread just because wheat got a little cheaper. So, because this massive tidal wave of supply totally overwhelms the tiny little bump in consumer demand, the price of the crop absolutely craters. And that severe price crash, it completely wipes out the farmer's total revenue. And this crazy economic reality actually explains why we see some completely backward-sounding government policies. Sometimes governments will mandate crop restrictions, literally paying farmers to grow less food. By artificially pulling that supply curve to the left and knowing that demand for food is rigid and inelastic, the price of the food shoots up. Believe it or not, growing less actually raises the total incomes of the farmers. It is a massive real-world application of everything we just talked about.
Finally, let's look at part 6, who really pays taxes?
This is our last big mystery. When the government slaps a huge tax on a product, who is secretly footing the bill? In economics, this is called tax incidence. It refers to the ultimate economic effect of a tax on the real incomes of producers and consumers. Let me let you in on a little secret. Just because a giant corporation physically writes the check to the government, it absolutely does not mean their profits are taking the hit. Ultimately, the market decides who actually pays. Let's take a hypothetical $2 tax placed directly on gas companies. Now, consumer demand for gas is pretty inelastic, right? We all still have to commute to work, but oil companies have a bit more flexibility in their supply. Because of this, the oil companies can just hike up the retail price at the pump, so the price you pay might suddenly shoot up by, say, $1.80. Even though the oil company officially pays the tax to the government, the consumer effectively eats almost the entire cost.
So the golden rule of tax shifting is this: the burden of a tax falls heaviest on the side of the market that is less elastic. If demand is inelastic, consumers are basically trapped and they end up paying. If supply is inelastic, like say the supply of land, then the producers are trapped and they foot the bill. Ultimately, whoever is least able to adapt, whoever has the most rigid, inflexible response, they are the ones left holding the bag.
So, armed with the incredible tool of elasticity, you aren't just a casual observer anymore. You can actually see right through political talking points and uncover the true economic reality hiding underneath. The next time a massive new tax is proposed, or you hear about prices totally plummeting due to overproduction, ask yourself, who does the math really say will pay for it? Keep questioning the mechanics of the world around you, and thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.